The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of gleaming metal and crystal, its domed ceiling displaying a real-time map of the known galaxy. Representatives from 1,200 species sat in their designated sections, each area customized for their particular atmospheric and gravitational needs. The air hummed with translation, devices working overtime to convert thousands of languages into comprehensible communication. Admiral of the Dominion fleet adjusted her crystalline exoskeleton as she addressed the assembly. Her species, had ruled the galaxy's military operations for over 2, and her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. We gather today to discuss the continued, amusing attempts of the species calling itself humanity to join our ranks, she began, her words causing ripples of chittering laughter throughout the chamber. Ambassador K from the Hegemony Worlds leaned forward, his tentacles writhing with barely contained mirth. Admiral, surely we needn't waste the Council's time on such primitive creatures. Their home world, what do they call it? Earth. It barely qualifies as a Class 7 civilization. The holographic display at the chamber's center shifted to show Earth in all its blue and green glory. To the assembled representatives, it looked pathetically small and insignificant compared to the massive artificial worlds and stellar engineering projects that marked truly advanced civilizations. Indeed, added Counselor from the Merchant Alliance, her multiple eyes blinking in sequence. Their technology is laughably primitive. They still use chemical propulsion for space travel. Chemical, can you imagine? My ancestors abandoned such crude methods 15,000 years ago. More laughter echoed through the chamber. Earth's attempts to reach out to the galactic community had been ongoing for nearly 50 standard years, ever since they detected the Council's communication networks. Their messages were polite, eager, and utterly naive about the true nature of galactic politics. Admiral gestured to her aide, who activated a recording of humanity's latest transmission. A middle-aged human woman appeared in the hologram, wearing what the species considered formal attire. "Greetings, members of the Galactic Council," the human said. "I am Secretary General Martinez of the United Earth Government. We humbly request consideration for associate membership in your organization. We offer our unique perspectives, our cultural diversity, and our determination to contribute to the greater galactic community." The chamber erupted in fresh waves of laughter. Several representatives actually fell from their perches or platforms, overcome with mirth. "Unique perspectives," wheezed Ambassador K. "What could a species that hasn't even achieved faster-than-light travel possibly offer us?" "They speak of cultural diversity," added another representative, "but they're all the same species. We have civilizations with hundreds of evolved variants. The collective alone encompasses 47 different intelligent subspecies." Admiral raised a hand for silence. "The entertainment value aside, we must address their persistence. This is their, 215th formal request?" 237th, corrected her aide. "They simply don't understand their place in the natural order," declared High Arbiter of the Judgment Caste. "The galaxy operates on a hierarchy of advancement. The strong guide the weak, the advanced shepherd the primitive. These humans sit at the very bottom of that hierarchy." The Galactic Council had evolved over millions of years into a complex system of castes and classifications. The Dominion species controlled military operations, the Hegemony managed resource distribution, the Merchant Alliance handled trade, and dozens of other powerful civilizations maintained their specialized roles. Below them were hundreds of client species, each serving their designated function in the galactic ecosystem. At the very bottom were the monitor species, civilizations so primitive they were simply observed from a distance, studied occasionally, but never contacted directly. Earth had been classified as a monitor species since the Council first detected their radio emissions centuries ago. "Perhaps," suggested Counselor, "we should explain to them exactly why they're unsuitable for membership. It might discourage these constant requests." "An amusing idea," Admiral replied. "Very well, compose a response detailing their numerous deficiencies. Make it educational." 3 days later, Earth received its first direct communication from the Galactic Council. The message was thorough, clinical, and devastating. Secretary General Martinez read the transmission aloud to the assembled world leaders in the United Earth Government's headquarters in Geneva. The chamber was silent except for her voice, as she listed the Council's assessment of humanity's failures. Your species lacks sufficient technological advancement, having failed to develop faster-than-light communication, artificial gravity, or fusion-based propulsion systems. Your social structure remains fragmented into competing nation-states rather than unified planetary governance. Your lifespans are insufficient for meaningful long-term planning. Your physical capabilities are among the lowest recorded for sapient species, lacking the strength, speed, or sensory acuity found in proper galactic citizens. The message continued for several pages, methodically dismantling every aspect of human civilization that the species took pride in. Their art was deemed simplistic, their science rudimentary, and their philosophy naive. But the final section was what truly stung. Most significantly, your species demonstrates the classic signs of terminal pacifism, a condition that inevitably leads to extinction when exposed to true galactic realities. Your reluctance to engage in necessary warfare, your attachment to concepts like human rights and diplomatic solutions, and your general squeamishness regarding survival of the fittest principles mark you as fundamentally unsuited for galactic civilization. The Council's recommendation is that your species focus on achieving basic technological before presuming to contact your superiors again. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when you have evolved beyond your current limitations, we might reconsider your status. The silence in the chamber stretched for long minutes after Martinez finished reading. Finally, President of the Asian Federation spoke. "They think we're a joke," he said quietly. "No," replied President of the American Union. "They think we're less than a joke. They think we're nothing." In the weeks that followed, the Council's assessment spread across Earth's global networks. The reaction was exactly what the aliens had predicted: shock, dismay, and a gradual acceptance of humanity's proper place in the cosmic order. Some nations attempted to accelerate their technological development programs. The Europeans poured resources into their quantum research initiatives. The Chinese expanded their fusion projects. The Americans redesigned their space exploration programs. But most of Earth's population simply gave up. Why reach for the stars when those stars were already occupied by beings who saw you as less than insects? Why dream of galactic civilization when that civilization had already judged you unworthy? The Galactic Council monitored Earth's responses with satisfaction. The humans were reacting exactly as expected, retreating into themselves, abandoning their ambitious dreams, accepting their status as a primitive monitor species. "Excellent," Admiral noted during the follow-up briefing. "Their submission to reality is proceeding on schedule. We should have no more annoying requests for membership." She was, of course, completely wrong. 6 months after the Council's devastating assessment, Earth sent another message. This one was different. Instead of the usual diplomatic language and humble requests, it was brief and direct. "Thank you for your assessment. We understand our current position in galactic civilization. However, we respectfully decline to abandon our goals. We will continue developing our capabilities and will reapply for membership when we feel ready." The message was signed not by Secretary General Martinez, but by a new organization calling itself the Stellar Development Initiative, a coalition of Earth's most ambitious scientists, engineers, and explorers. Admiral stared at the transmission with something approaching disbelief. They're refusing to give up. "Apparently so," her aide confirmed. "Intelligence reports indicate they've actually accelerated their research programs since receiving our assessment. But that's not how primitive species react to reality. They're supposed to accept their limitations and focus on local development within their natural capabilities." The aide pulled up additional data. "They've begun construction of what they call Project Prometheus, apparently an attempt to develop faster-than-light travel using theoretical physics principles that our own scientists consider questionable at best." Questionable? They're trying to manipulate spacetime using gravitational field manipulation. Most experts consider such approaches fundamentally impossible without massive energy expenditures that would require star-sized power sources. Admiral dismissed the report with a wave of her hand. Let them waste their time and resources on impossible dreams. Eventually, reality will force them to accept their place in the natural order. But as months turned to years, Earth's activities became increasingly difficult to ignore. Their space-based construction projects grew larger and more sophisticated. Their energy output increased exponentially as they built fusion plants and orbital solar collectors. Most disturbing of all, their theoretical research was beginning to produce results that the Council's own scientists couldn't explain. Dr. Sarah stood in the command center of Prometheus Station, Earth's first major orbital research facility. The station hung in space beyond lunar orbit, its modular construction allowing for constant expansion as new sections were added. "Status report," she called to her team. "Gravitational field generators are operating at 93% efficiency," replied Doctor from his position at the physics console. "We're seeing stable field manipulation at scales previously thought impossible. Energy requirements still massive, but within acceptable parameters thanks to the new fusion array. We're drawing approximately 40% of Earth's total power output for each test." Doctor nodded grimly. The energy requirements were indeed enormous. The entire planet was essentially powering their experiments. But the alternative was accepting defeat, and humanity had collectively decided that was unacceptable. "Initiate test sequence 47, she ordered. The station hummed with power as exotic energies bent space-time around a small test vehicle. For a moment, the ship existed in multiple locations simultaneously, its mass distributed across folded space. Then it vanished. "Telemetry?" Doctor asked, her heart racing. "We've got signal," Doctor shouted. "The test vehicle has successfully traveled 47,000 kilometers instantaneously. The field collapse created a stable corridor through folded space-time." Cheers erupted throughout the command center. After 12 years of failures, setbacks, and seemingly impossible technical challenges, they had achieved faster-than-light travel. The news reached the Galactic Council 3 days later when their monitoring stations detected the energy signatures of humanity's experiments. The initial reports were dismissed. As sensor errors, primitive species couldn't possibly manipulate space-time at those scales. But when Earth's next official transmission arrived, the Council was forced to pay attention. "Greetings, members of the Galactic Council. This is Dr. Sarah of the Stellar Development Initiative. We're pleased to inform you that humanity has successfully achieved faster-than-light travel capabilities. We are now prepared to begin our expansion into local stellar regions and look forward to establishing formal diplomatic contact with neighboring civilizations." The message was accompanied by detailed technical specifications and recorded footage of successful FTL tests. Admiral stared at the data in growing horror. "This is impossible," she declared. "Our own physicists spent developing reliable FTL systems. These humans have barely had fire for 10,000 years." Her aide's investigation revealed the truth. "Ma'am, it appears they've developed an entirely new approach to space-time manipulation. Instead of using the conventional dimensional folding techniques employed by most galactic civilizations, they've found a way to create stable gravitational corridors through space-time itself." "Is their method superior to ours?" "In several ways, yes. It requires less energy per unit distance traveled, and it doesn't suffer from the dimensional stability problems that limit our own FTL travel to established hyperspace lanes." Admiral felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries: genuine concern. The natural order of galactic civilization depended on technological progression following predictable patterns. Primitive species weren't supposed to leap directly to advanced capabilities, especially not using methods that surpassed established techniques. "What's their current expansion rate?" she asked. "Unknown, but they've begun construction of larger vessels equipped with their new drive systems. Intelligence estimates suggest they could have a significant interstellar presence within 50 years. 50 years. In galactic terms, that was essentially instantaneous. Most species took to establish meaningful interstellar civilizations." "Send a message to the Council," Admiral ordered. "We need to discuss the Earth situation." The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within days. The first emergency session called specifically to address a monitor species in recorded history. "The situation is unprecedented," Admiral explained to the assembled representatives. "Humanity has demonstrated capabilities that fundamentally challenge our understanding of technological development." Ambassador K's tentacles writhed with agitation. Surely you're exaggerating. So they've stumbled onto a crude form of FTL travel. Many species develop such capabilities eventually. This is not crude, the Admiral replied, displaying the technical analysis. In fact, it's more efficient than our own systems. If they continue developing at this rate, they could become a significant power within centuries rather than. High Arbiter raised objections. The natural order cannot be so easily disrupted. These humans must have limitations we haven't discovered yet. Perhaps their new technology has hidden drawbacks. But as more reports arrived from Council monitoring stations, it became clear that humanity's advancement was accelerating rather than slowing down. Their first interstellar ships had launched toward nearby star systems. Their technological innovations were being shared freely across their entire species, accelerating development even further. Most disturbing of all, they weren't following the established patterns of galactic expansion. Instead of the careful, methodical colonization employed by proper civilizations, humans were spreading outward in all directions simultaneously, establishing research stations and exploration bases throughout local space. They're not behaving like a normal emerging civilization, observed Counselor. Where are the territorial disputes, the resource conflicts, the typical wars that accompany rapid expansion? They appear to be maintaining their unified planetary government structure even as they spread across multiple star systems, Admiral confirmed. And they're actually sharing resources and discoveries between their various colonies rather than competing for dominance. This was perhaps the most disturbing development of all. Every known civilization went through phases of internal conflict during their expansion period. It was a natural part of the selection process that weeded out weak leadership and established proper hierarchies. But humanity seemed to be cooperating with itself. We need to act, declared Ambassador K. If these humans continue their current trajectory, they could disrupt the entire galactic order within centuries. What do you propose? Asked High Arbiter. Contact them directly. Explain the proper procedures for galactic expansion. Integrate them into the established system before they can cause any real disruption. Admiral considered this. Direct contact with rapidly developing species was always risky, but the alternative allowing humanity to continue its chaotic expansion unchecked could be worse. Very well, she decided. Prepare a diplomatic mission. We'll make formal contact and explain how galactic civilization actually works. The decision would prove to be the Council's first major mistake regarding humanity, but it wouldn't be their last. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the EFS Explorer, humanity's most advanced starship, as it approached the coordinates in the Galactic Council's message. After 30 years of sending messages to the Council and receiving only dismissive responses, this was humanity's first invitation to direct contact. Long-range sensors are detecting a massive artificial structure, reported Lieutenant Commander Park from the science station. It's incredible. The thing must be larger than Earth's moon. The main activated, revealing the Council's diplomatic station in all its imposing glory. The structure was clearly designed to impress, a crystalline city floating in the void, its countless towers and platforms glowing with exotic energies. They're hailing us, announced Communications Officer Wright. Open a channel. Admiral's image appeared on the screen, her crystalline form radiating authority even across species barriers. Greetings, representatives of humanity. I am Admiral of the Galactic Council's Dominion Fleet. Welcome to Diplomatic Station Nexus. Greetings, Admiral, Captain Santos replied. I'm Captain Maria Santos of the Earth Federation. We're honored by this opportunity for direct contact. Indeed, your species has surprised us with its recent technological developments. We felt it was time to discuss your place in galactic civilization directly. Captain Santos had been briefed extensively on the Council's previous communications. She knew this meeting was likely humanity's only chance to avoid being classified as a threat to galactic order. We're eager to learn about proper galactic protocols, she said diplomatically. Excellent, please dock with Bay 7 and we'll begin your education. The docking process itself was a demonstration of the vast technological gap between humanity and the established galactic powers. The Explorer, Earth's finest ship, looked like a crude metal box compared to the sleek vessels filling the station's bays. Captain Santos and her diplomatic team were escorted through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves as they walked, past viewports showing impossible vistas of folded spacetime. The message was clear. This was what real advanced civilization looked like. They were eventually led to a conference chamber where Admiral waited with representatives from several other major council species. The room itself was larger than many Earth buildings, its ceiling lost in distant shadows. "Be seated," Admiral commanded, gesturing to what appeared to be standard chairs, but which adjusted themselves automatically to human physiology. "First," she began, "you must understand that galactic civilization operates according to established principles developed over millions of years. These principles exist for good reasons and have maintained peace and stability across the galaxy." A holographic display materialized, showing the Council's territorial divisions and hierarchical structure. Each species has its designated role based on its capabilities and advancement level. The Dominion controls military operations, the Hegemony manages resource allocation, the Merchant Alliance handles trade, and so forth. This specialization prevents conflict and ensures efficient operation of galactic society. Captain Santos studied the display carefully. Where would humanity fit in this structure? "That," Admiral replied, "is what we're here to determine. Your recent technological achievements suggest you may be suitable for a junior role in the technical development caste, assuming you can demonstrate proper understanding of galactic protocols. And those protocols are respect for established authority, acceptance of your designated place in the hierarchy, cessation of your current chaotic expansion in favor of orderly development within assigned territories." The human delegation exchanged glances. Doctor, the mission's chief scientist, spoke up. "Admiral, could you clarify what you mean by chaotic expansion? Our exploration programs have been carefully planned to avoid any inhabited systems." "The problem," interjected Ambassador K, "is not where you're expanding, but how. Proper galactic civilizations expand gradually, establishing clear territorial boundaries and resource claims. You're spreading in all directions simultaneously without establishing proper dominance hierarchies. Additionally," added Counselor, "your sharing of technological developments across your entire species is unusual. Most civilizations maintain competitive advantages through controlled information distribution." Captain Santos was beginning to understand the fundamental disconnect. "You're saying that cooperation within our own species is problematic." "Cooperation has its place," Admiral explained patiently, "but so does competition. How do you determine which of your colonies deserves the best resources? How do you decide which research teams should receive priority support? How do you maintain proper leadership hierarchies without competitive pressure?" "We make those decisions democratically," Doctor replied. "We've found that collaboration produces better results than competition in most cases." The silence that followed this statement was profound. Several of the alien representatives actually recoiled slightly, as if the concept was physically disturbing. "Democracy," Ambassador K said finally, "is a primitive governmental form suitable only for early-stage civilizations. As species mature, they naturally develop proper hierarchical structures based on merit and capability." "But what if our democratic systems are actually more effective?" Captain Santos asked. "Our technological development rate suggests that our collaborative approach might have advantages." Admiral's crystalline features hardened. "Your recent achievements are impressive but irrelevant to the broader question of social organization. No species in galactic history has maintained democratic governance beyond the planetary stage. It simply doesn't scale to interstellar civilization." "With respect, Admiral," Doctor said quietly, "perhaps no other species has tried hard enough to make it work." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Every alien representative was now staring at the humans, with expressions ranging from shock to outright hostility. "You're suggesting," High Arbiter said slowly, "that millions of years of galactic civilization have been mistaken about fundamental social organization." "We're suggesting," Captain Santos replied carefully, "that different approaches might work for different species. Perhaps humanity's path to advancement doesn't need to follow the same patterns as other civilizations." Admiral stood abruptly, her imposing form towering over the seated humans. This discussion has taken an unfortunate turn. Your species clearly needs time to mature before you can properly appreciate the wisdom of established galactic order. She gestured to her aides. Escort our guests back to their vessel. The Council will deliberate on humanity's future status. As the human delegation was led back through the station's shifting corridors, Captain Santos couldn't shake the feeling that they had just failed some crucial test, not through incompetence, but by refusing to abandon the very principles that had made their rapid advancement possible. The Council's deliberations began immediately after the humans departed. They're more dangerous than we initially assessed, Admiral declared. Their technological capabilities are advancing rapidly, but their social development remains stuck in primitive patterns. Dangerous? Questioned Counselor. They're a single species occupying a handful of star systems. How could they possibly threaten galactic civilization? Because they're spreading ideas as dangerous as their technology, the Admiral replied. This notion that cooperation is superior to competition, that democratic governance can scale to interstellar levels that established hierarchies might be wrong, if such concepts spread to other species. The implications were staggering. Galactic civilization depended on established power structures and accepted hierarchies. If species began questioning those foundations, the entire system could collapse into chaos. What do you recommend? Asked High Arbiter. Admiral consulted with her military advisors before responding. Containment. We establish a quarantine zone around human space. No contact with other species until they mature enough to accept proper galactic order. And if they refuse to accept containment, then we enforce it. The vote was unanimous. Within days, Dominion fleet units were deployed to strategic positions around human space. The quarantine was to remain in effect until humanity either accepted its proper place in galactic civilization or the alternative was left unspoken, but everyone understood. Earth received notification of the quarantine 3 weeks later. The message was brief and uncompromising. By order of the Galactic Council, human expansion beyond your current territorial limits is hereby prohibited pending resolution of your species' social development issues. Compliance is not optional. The response from Earth was equally brief. Message received and understood. However, we cannot accept restrictions on our peaceful exploration and development activities. We will continue our expansion programs while remaining open to diplomatic resolution of any concerns. Admiral read Earth's response with growing disbelief. Did these primitive creatures actually think they could defy the Galactic Council? Deploy additional fleet units, she ordered. If they won't accept containment voluntarily, we'll make the consequences of defiance clear. But as Dominion ships moved to intercept human vessels, they encountered something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans fought back, not with the desperate fury of a cornered animal, but with calculated precision and technological innovation that caught the supposedly superior Dominion forces completely off guard. The first engagement occurred when a Dominion patrol intercepted a human exploration vessel near the edge of their expanding territory. Standard procedure called for the human ship to surrender and return to their designated space. Instead, the human vessel requested clarification of the Dominion's legal authority to restrict peaceful exploration, cited several galactic laws regarding freedom of navigation, and when the patrol moved to disable their engines, opened fire with weapons that shouldn't have existed. The human ship escaped, leaving the Dominion patrol's flagship badly damaged and their escort vessels completely disabled. How is this possible? Admiral demanded as she reviewed the battle reports. Their weapons technology was supposed to be centuries behind ours. They've made additional breakthroughs, her aide reported grimly. Intelligence suggests they've developed entirely new approaches to energy projection and defensive systems. Our standard tactics and equipment proved inadequate. More disturbing than their technological advances was their tactical approach. Instead of the honorable single combat favored by most galactic civilizations, humans fought in coordinated groups, sharing tactical data instantaneously and adapting their strategies in real time. Worse, they didn't seem to understand the concept of honorable defeat. When overwhelmed, they didn't surrender, they retreated, regrouped, and came back with improved tactics and better equipment. "They're not following the proper rules of engagement," complained Fleet Commander N after his third unsuccessful attempt to contain human expansion. "They use deception, misdirection, and asymmetric tactics. It's uncivilized." "Uncivilized or not," Admiral replied, "it's effective." Human space continued expanding despite the Dominion's efforts. Every engagement taught the humans something new about galactic military technology, and they adapted with frightening speed. Their ships became faster, their weapons more effective, their tactics more sophisticated. Most disturbing of all, they began sharing their innovations with every human colony and ship simultaneously. A tactical breakthrough discovered in one battle was implemented fleet-wide within days. "They're treating warfare like a collaborative research project," observed Admiral's tactical advisor. "Every engagement generates data that improves their overall capabilities." The Admiral stared at the strategic display showing human expansion routes. Red markers indicated Dominion fleet positions, but the humans were flowing around them like water, finding gaps in coverage and establishing new colonies faster than the fleet could respond. "Increase our deployment," she ordered. "I want 3 times as many ships dedicated to containment." "Admiral," her aide said hesitantly, "the Council is beginning to question the resource allocation for this operation. Some members are asking whether containing one primitive species really requires this much of our military capacity." Admiral's crystalline features reflected the harsh lighting of the command center. "Tell the Council that if we don't contain humanity now, we may not be able to later." She didn't yet realize how prophetic those words would prove to be. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in recorded history. For the first time military reports dominated the agenda as Admiral presented increasingly disturbing intelligence about human activities. "The situation has escalated beyond simple territorial expansion," she announced to the assembled representatives. "Humanity has established colonies in 47 star systems, despite our containment efforts. More concerning, they're not just spreading, they're building." The holographic display showed the growing network of human installations, orbital manufacturing platforms, asteroid mining operations, and massive space-based research facilities. Each new construction project seemed larger and more sophisticated than the last. "Their industrial capacity is expanding exponentially," continued the Admiral. "Intelligence estimates suggest their manufacturing output has increased by 3,000% in just 5 years. Ambassador K's tentacles writhed with agitation. "How is such rapid industrialization possible? Our own expansion protocols require centuries of careful resource management and territorial consolidation." "They've abandoned traditional expansion models entirely," Admiral explained. "Instead of establishing territorial control over planets, they're building mobile industrial platforms that harvest resources from asteroid belts and uninhabited systems. They're essentially turning entire star systems into factories." High Arbiter leaned forward in his judgment throne. "Surely this approach has limitations. What about resource conflicts, territorial disputes, the normal competitive pressures that regulate civilized expansion?" "That's just it," the Admiral replied grimly. "They're not competing with each other. Every human colony shares resources, technology, and manufacturing capacity with every other colony. They've created a single, integrated industrial network spanning dozens of star systems." The concept was so alien to galactic thinking that several representatives required translation clarification. The idea of voluntary resource sharing on an interstellar scale was simply incomprehensible to species that had built their civilizations on hierarchical competition. Counselor spoke up from the Merchant Alliance section. "Such a system should collapse under its own inefficiencies. Without proper market pressures and competitive distribution, how do they allocate resources effectively?" "Apparently through some form of advanced computational modeling combined with democratic consensus," Admiral said, her voice carrying a note of disbelief. "They've developed artificial intelligence systems that can coordinate resource allocation across multiple star systems in real time." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Every major galactic civilization had experimented with artificial intelligence at some point, but the results had invariably led to either rebellion or stagnation. The idea that humans had successfully integrated AI systems into their society was deeply unsettling. There's more, the Admiral continued. Our attempts at containment have produced unexpected results. She activated new sections of the display showing recent battle sites. Instead of the expected pattern of human retreat and regrouping, the data showed something else entirely. After each engagement, human ships don't just withdraw, they return with completely new technological configurations. Our weapons are becoming less effective with each encounter, while theirs are becoming more sophisticated. How quickly are these adaptations occurring? Asked High Arbiter. Days, sometimes hours. We engaged a human squadron near the system last week. They retreated after sustaining heavy damage. When we encountered the same ships 2 days later, they'd been completely rebuilt with new defensive systems that rendered our weapons nearly useless. Fleet Commander N requested permission to address the Council. Honored representatives, the human approach to warfare differs fundamentally from any enemy we've previously faced. They don't seem to view military engagement as a competition to establish dominance, but rather as a learning exercise to improve their capabilities. He gestured to tactical displays showing human fleet movements. They retreat when faced with superior force, but they remember everything. Every weapon we use, every tactic we employ, every technological advantage we deploy is studied, analyzed, and countered. They're treating our entire military doctrine as a training curriculum. Ambassador K's color shifted to a deeper purple, indicating extreme agitation. Surely the Dominion fleet can overcome simple technical adaptations. Our military superiority rests on millions of years of accumulated experience. Admiral's response was unusually quiet. That's what we believed. However, human adaptations go beyond simple technological improvements. They're developing entirely new forms of warfare. She activated recorded footage from the most recent engagement. The display showed human ships moving in perfect coordination, their actions synchronized to millisecond precision. But instead of the traditional formation fighting favored by galactic civilizations, the humans employed constantly shifting tactical patterns that seemed to predict and counter Dominion responses before they occurred. They're not just adapting to our tactics, the Admiral explained. They're anticipating them. Their artificial intelligence systems appear capable of modeling our decision-making processes and developing countermeasures in advance. The footage continued, showing human ships executing maneuvers that should have been impossible given their size and apparent engine capabilities. They seem to be bending the laws of physics in ways that the Council's finest scientists couldn't explain. How are they achieving such mobility? Counselor demanded. Unknown. Our technical analysis suggests they've made fundamental breakthroughs in gravitational manipulation that exceed our current understanding. Their ships can essentially redefine local spacetime to achieve impossible accelerations and directional changes. High Arbiter stood from his judgment throne, his imposing form radiating authority. The natural order of galactic civilization cannot be disrupted by a single primitive species. What are our options for containing this threat? Admiral consulted her tactical advisors before responding. Currently, limited. Direct military confrontation has proven counterproductive, as each engagement only accelerates their technological development. Economic pressure is impossible since they don't participate in galactic trade networks. Diplomatic isolation is ineffective since they seem perfectly content to develop independently. What about more decisive measures? Suggested Ambassador K. The Admiral understood the implication. Total warfare against human colonies would require massive fleet deployments and likely result in significant Dominion casualties. Moreover, their distributed industrial base makes it difficult to achieve decisive strikes. Destroying one colony would barely impact their overall capabilities. Then what do you recommend? Admiral's crystalline features reflected the harsh lighting of the chamber. We need to understand them better before we can defeat them. I propose authorizing deep reconnaissance missions to gather intelligence about their social structures, technological base, and strategic planning. The Council voted to approve expanded intelligence operations, but their decision came too late. Unknown to the assembled representatives, human surveillance systems had been monitoring Galactic Council communications for months. Dr. Sarah stood in the command center of Prometheus Station. now expanded into a massive orbital city housing over 2 million researchers and support staff. The station's quantum computers had intercepted and decoded the Council's latest deliberations within hours of transmission. "They're escalating," reported Intelligence Director Park as he reviewed the translated Council transcripts. "Admiral is requesting authorization for deep penetration reconnaissance missions." "Any indication of their ultimate intentions?" Doctor asked. "Reading between the lines, I'd say they're evaluating options for a final solution to what they see as the human problem. We're no longer viewed as a primitive species to be managed, but as an existential threat to galactic order." Doctor studied the strategic display showing known galactic territories and power structures. The scale was staggering, thousands of species organized into a rigid hierarchy spanning most of the galaxy. Humanity controlled less than 1/10 of 1% of known space, yet somehow posed a threat to the entire system. "What makes us so dangerous?" she wondered aloud. "I think," replied Director Park, "it's not what we are, but what we represent. The Galactic Council's power depends on everyone accepting that hierarchical competition is the only way to organize advanced civilization. We're living proof that cooperation might work better." The implications were profound. If humanity's collaborative approach proved superior to the Council's competitive hierarchies, it would undermine the fundamental assumptions that held galactic civilization together. "They can't allow us to succeed," Doctor realized. "Not because we threaten them militarily, but because we threaten the entire basis of their social order." "So what do we do?" Doctor turned to address the assembled staff of Prometheus Station. Scientists, engineers, philosophers, and military strategists from every human colony were present either in person or via quantum communication links. "We have a choice," she announced. "We can attempt to find accommodation with the existing galactic order, accepting a subordinate position in their hierarchy and abandoning the principles that made our advancement possible. Or we can continue on our current path, knowing that it will inevitably lead to conflict with the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy." The debate that followed lasted for days and involved every human colony and research station. Unlike the Council's hierarchical decision-making process, humanity's choice emerged through genuine democratic discourse involving billions of participants. The result was never really in doubt. "We continue," Doctor announced. "But we do so with full understanding of what that means. We're not just exploring space anymore, we're challenging the fundamental organization of galactic civilization." The decision triggered the largest expansion of human activities in their species' history. If conflict with the Council was inevitable, humanity would meet it with every advantage they could develop. Project Prometheus expanded beyond faster-than-light travel to encompass revolutionary advances in every field of science and technology. Quantum computing networks linked every human installation, creating a collective intelligence that could coordinate activities across interstellar distances in real time. Manufacturing platforms grew larger and more sophisticated, turning asteroids into starships and moons into industrial complexes. Artificial intelligence systems evolved beyond simple computational tools into genuine collaborative partners, augmenting human creativity rather than replacing it. Most importantly, humanity began preparing for the war they knew was coming. Admiral stood on the bridge of the EFS Defiance, flagship of humanity's rapidly expanding fleet. Unlike the ornate command centers favored by galactic civilizations, the Defiance's bridge was a study in functional efficiency. Every surface served multiple purposes, every system was designed for rapid reconfiguration, and every crew member could access the ship's complete tactical database through neural interface links. "Status report," he commanded. "All fleet elements are positioned according to the dispersal plan," replied Commander Martinez from the tactical station. "We have battle groups stationed in 37 systems, with mobile reserves ready for rapid deployment." Admiral studied the strategic display showing human and known alien positions. Their intelligence networks now covered a significant portion of local galactic space, providing real-time information about Dominion fleet movements and Council deliberations. "Any word from the reconnaissance missions?" "Alpha Team reports successful infiltration of the hegemony trade networks. They've gathered extensive intelligence about Council logistics and supply chains. Beta Team has established observation posts in 3 neutral systems between human and Dominion space. The intelligence they'd gathered painted a sobering picture of what they faced. The Galactic Council commanded military forces spanning thousands of star systems, industrial capabilities that dwarfed humanity's exponential growth, and technologies refined over millions of years of development. By any rational analysis, humanity's chances in a direct confrontation with the Council were essentially zero. "Sir," Communications Officer Wright announced, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's marked for your personal attention." Admiral accepted the encrypted message, his expression growing grim as he read the contents. "All department heads to the briefing room," he ordered. "We've just received new intelligence about Council intentions." The briefing room filled with the Defiance's senior staff as Admiral activated the classified report from Earth's intelligence services. 48 hours ago," he began, "our monitoring stations intercepted communications between Admiral and the Dominion High Command. The Council has voted to authorize what they're calling Pacification Protocol 7, complete military subjugation of human space." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Commander Martinez was the first to speak. "Timeline? Unknown, but intelligence suggests they're massing fleet elements in staging areas throughout their territory. Best estimates indicate they'll be ready to begin operations within 6 months. Numbers." Admiral's voice was steady despite the magnitude of what he was reporting. "Conservative estimates suggest they'll deploy approximately 12,000 capital ships supported by 50,000 escort vessels and an unknown number of support craft." The silence that followed was profound. Humanity's entire fleet consisted of fewer than 300 major vessels. "Sir," asked Chief Engineer, "do we have any advantages at all?" "Several, actually," Admiral replied, his confidence surprising the assembled officers. "First, our ships are individually superior to most Council vessels. Our technology has advanced beyond theirs in several key areas. Second, we have complete tactical integration through our AI networks, allowing coordination they can't match. Third, we know exactly where they're going to attack." He activated new sections of the display, showing human defensive preparations. "But most importantly, we're not going to fight them the way they expect to be fought." The plan that Admiral outlined was unlike anything in recorded galactic military history. Instead of the traditional approach of establishing defensive lines and fighting for territorial control, humanity would implement what they called distributed asymmetric defense. Human colonies would be evacuated to mobile platforms that could relocate within hours. Manufacturing capabilities were distributed across thousands of installations, each capable of independent operation. Most critically, human forces would abandon fixed positions in favor of constant mobility and adaptation. "We can't match their numbers," Admiral explained, "but we don't need to. Our goal isn't to destroy their fleet, it's to make conquest impossible." The strategy relied on humanity's unique advantages: instantaneous communication across interstellar distances, industrial capabilities that could rapidly replace losses, and tactical flexibility that allowed them to learn and adapt faster than their enemies could respond. "They're planning to fight a war of conquest," the Admiral concluded. "We're going to fight a war of evolution." As human preparations intensified, the Galactic Council completed their own massive military buildup. Admiral stood in the primary command center of the Dominion flagship Eternal Dominion, a vessel larger than most human colonies and armed with weapons capable of sterilizing planets. "Fleet status?" she inquired. "All battle groups report ready for deployment," replied her chief of staff. "We have 13,000 capital ships divided into 4 attack formations, with support elements numbering over 60,000 vessels." The assembled fleet represented the largest military operation in galactic history. Ships from dozens of species filled the staging areas, their combined firepower sufficient to reduce entire star systems to cosmic debris. Opposition assessment. Latest intelligence indicates approximately 300 human vessels of various sizes. Technical analysis suggests their individual capabilities exceed our initial estimates, but the numerical disparity is insurmountable. Admiral studied the tactical projections with satisfaction. Even accounting for human technological advantages, the mathematics were straightforward. Superior numbers would ultimately prevail. "Begin final preparations," she ordered. "We commence operations in 72 hours." As the massive Council fleet began moving toward human space, both sides prepared for what they believed would be the final confrontation. Neither fully understood how profoundly the coming conflict would change the galaxy forever. The first shots of what would later be called the Transformation War were fired when Council reconnaissance units encountered human early warning systems at the edge of contested space. What followed was unlike any military engagement in galactic history. The Council forces expected either immediate human surrender or desperate last-stand defenses at key strategic points. Instead, they found empty space. Human colonies had vanished, leaving behind only abandoned infrastructure and defensive drones programmed to gather intelligence about Council capabilities. When the invading fleets arrived at major human population centers, they discovered that entire civilizations had simply moved. "Where are they?" Admiral demanded as her forces occupied system after system of empty human installations. "Unknown," replied her intelligence chief. "Long-range sensors detect no major concentrations of human ships or habitats. They appear to have evacuated their entire population." "To where?" "Our strategic analysis accounted for all possible fallback positions." "That's the problem, Admiral. They don't appear to be falling back to fortified positions. They seem to have dispersed throughout space in small, mobile groups." The realization dawned slowly. Humanity hadn't concentrated their forces for a decisive battle. They dissolved their entire civilization into countless independent elements, each capable of survival and continued resistance. "Find them," Admiral ordered. "Deploy search patterns throughout human space. They can't hide entire populations indefinitely." But as the days passed, it became clear that humanity had achieved the impossible. Through advanced life support technologies, mobile manufacturing platforms, and distributed resource networks, they had essentially made their entire civilization nomadic. More troubling were the reports of human attacks on Council supply lines. Small human units were striking Dominion logistics convoys throughout the occupied territory, using hit-and-run tactics that inflicted significant damage before disappearing into the vastness of space. "They're not trying to defeat us in battle," Admiral realized. "They're trying to make occupation impossible." Each attack taught the humans more about Council weaknesses, while their own capabilities continued to evolve. New weapons appeared with each engagement, new tactics that countered Dominion responses, new technologies that seemed to violate known physical laws. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. Intercepted communications revealed not the desperate fear of a cornered species, but the excited collaboration of researchers working on fascinating problems. They treated each Council countermeasure as an interesting challenge to be solved rather than a threat to be feared. "They think this is a game," Admiral reported to the Council in her latest situation briefing. "Every engagement is treated as an experiment, every tactical exchange as a learning opportunity." "What are our losses?" asked High Arbiter. "Significant and growing. We've lost over 200 capital ships and nearly 1,000 support vessels. Human forces remain largely intact and continue to demonstrate improving capabilities." The numbers were shocking. In just 3 months of conflict, humanity had inflicted more casualties on the Dominion fleet than the previous century of conventional wars combined. "How is this possible?" demanded Ambassador K. Admiral's explanation was as disturbing as the casualty figures. "They've weaponized their entire approach to civilization. Their collaborative development, their distributed manufacturing, their democratic decision-making, all of these supposed weaknesses have become military advantages." She activated displays showing human tactical adaptations. When they encounter a new Council weapon system, within days they've developed countermeasures and distributed them to their entire fleet. When we destroy one of their manufacturing platforms, 3 more come online to replace it. When we adapt our tactics, they adapt faster. "The situation is untenable," declared High Arbiter. "We're fighting an enemy that learns faster than we can teach them." Admiral nodded grimly. More than that, we're fighting an enemy that's teaching us. Every engagement demonstrates new possibilities, new approaches to technology and warfare that our own species never considered. The truth was even more disturbing than she realized. Human innovations weren't just military, they were beginning to spread throughout galactic civilization itself. Reports were filtering in from across Council's space of client species, experimenting with collaborative research methods, democratic governance structures, and resource-sharing arrangements. The ideas that made humanity dangerous were proving contagious. "We need to end this quickly," Admiral concluded, "before their influence spreads further." But even as she spoke, intelligence reports were arriving that would make such hopes impossible to achieve. Captain stood on the bridge of the EFS Innovation, one of humanity's vessels, as it approached the coordinates for a clandestine meeting that could change the course of the war. "Long-range sensors detect the rendezvous point," reported her science officer. "Two vessels of unknown configuration, neither matching Council designs. Open a communication channel." The main screen activated, revealing beings unlike any humanity had previously encountered. They appeared reptilian, but with distinctive cybernetic enhancements, their ships bearing markings that identified them as representatives of the Commonwealth. "Greetings, humans," the lead communicated through advanced translation protocols. "I am Coordinator K of the Commonwealth Intelligence Service. We appreciate your willingness to meet under these unusual circumstances." Captain had been briefed on the during her flight to the rendezvous. They were one of several species that had contacted humanity secretly over the past months, seeking information about human technologies and social organization. "Thank you for coming, Coordinator. Your message mentioned mutual interests regarding galactic governance." K's reptilian features shifted in what the translation systems indicated was an expression of agreement. "Indeed, the Commonwealth has observed your conflict with the Galactic Council with great interest. Your alternative approaches to civilization have generated considerable discussion among our people." "Alternative approaches?" "Your collaborative development methods, your democratic decision-making processes, your apparent ability to maintain unity across multiple star systems without hierarchical compulsion. These concepts challenge fundamental assumptions about advanced civilization." Captain exchanged glances with her diplomatic team. If other species were questioning the Council's basic principles, the implications could be enormous. "What are you proposing, Coordinator?" "Information exchange. We share intelligence about Council operations and strategic planning. You share details about your technological development and social organization methods. And if the Council discovers these communications..." K's expression conveyed what the translators interpreted as dark humor. "Captain, the Council considers the Commonwealth to be properly subordinate members of galactic civilization. They would be surprised to learn of our independent interests." The meeting that followed lasted several hours and covered topics that would have horrified the Galactic Council. They revealed that numerous species throughout Council space were secretly questioning the hierarchical principles that governed galactic society. "Your example," Kay explained, "has demonstrated that rapid technological advancement is possible without the competitive pressures that the Council claims are essential. This has caused many species to wonder what else might be possible." More immediately relevant were the intelligence reports they shared about Council military operations. The information painted a picture of growing desperation within the Dominion High Command as human resistance continued to evolve beyond their ability to counter. "Admiral has requested authorization to deploy what the Council terms absolute weapons," Kay revealed. "Technologies that could sterilize entire star systems to deny them to human forces." The news was sobering. Humanity's distributed defense strategy depended on being able to operate throughout the galaxy's uninhabited regions. If the Council was willing to destroy those regions entirely, human options would become severely limited. When Captain asked, "Unknown, but intelligence suggests the authorization is being seriously considered. The Council views your continued resistance as an existential threat to galactic order." As the clandestine meeting concluded, both sides understood that the conflict had evolved far beyond a simple territorial dispute. The war between humanity and the Galactic Council had become a struggle over the fundamental principles that would govern galactic civilization. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive the Council's military might, but whether galactic civilization itself could survive the transformation that was already beginning. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened under unprecedented security measures. For the first time in recorded history, the chamber was sealed against all external monitoring, and attendance was restricted to the highest-ranking representatives of the 12 founding species. Admiral stood before the assembled leadership, her crystalline form reflecting the harsh emergency lighting that bathed the chamber in ominous shadows. "Honored counselors," she began, "we face a crisis that threatens not just our military operations, but the fundamental structure of galactic civilization itself." She activated classified intelligence reports that painted a disturbing picture of spreading unrest throughout Council space. In the 6 months since the human conflict began, we have documented significant disturbances in 47 different sectors. Client species are questioning established authority structures, demanding greater autonomy in their development programs, and in some cases, openly refusing compliance with resource allocation directives. High Arbiter leaned forward in his judgment throne. "Are you suggesting that the human infection is spreading?" "I'm reporting that human concepts of collaborative governance and technological development are being actively discussed and experimented with by species throughout our territory," the Admiral replied grimly. The holographic displays showed riots on industrial worlds, work stoppages in mining operations, and most alarming of all, unauthorized research programs attempting to replicate human innovations. Ambassador K's tentacles writhed with agitation. "This is impossible. Our client species have accepted hierarchical governance for, they understand their proper place in the galactic order." "Apparently," Admiral replied, "the human example has caused them to reconsider what's possible." Counselor spoke from her position in the Merchant Alliance section. "What specific incidents are we dealing with?" 3 days ago, the mining consortium in the Altair sector declared independence and established what they call a worker cooperative, modeled on human organizational principles. Yesterday, the research stations in the Vega system announced they were implementing open-source development protocols and would be sharing all technological advances freely with neighboring systems. The silence that greeted this news was profound. The concepts of worker autonomy and free information sharing struck at the very heart of Council power structures. "Most concerning," the Admiral continued, "are reports of unauthorized contact between various client species and human representatives. Our counterintelligence services have detected at least 12 separate communication networks operating outside official channels." High Arbiter stood from his throne, his imposing form radiating authority. "The situation is clear. We are dealing with not just military resistance, but ideological contamination. What solutions do you propose?" Admiral consulted her advisors before responding. "Traditional suppression methods are proving inadequate. Each client species we attempt to bring back into compliance cites human achievements as justification for their independence movements. Then we eliminate the source of contamination," declared Ambassador K. "Deploy absolute weapons against human space. Remove their example from the galaxy permanently." "That option has been considered," the Admiral replied. "However, analysis suggests it may be too late for such measures to be effective." She activated new intelligence displays, showing the scope of human influence. Human technological innovations and social concepts have already spread beyond our ability to contain them. Destroying human space would create martyrs while leaving their ideas intact throughout galactic civilization. The implications were staggering. For the first time in millions of years, the Galactic Council faced a threat that couldn't be resolved through military force or economic pressure. "What do you recommend?" asked High Arbiter. Admiral's response would have been unthinkable just months earlier. "Negotiation. We need to find some form of accommodation with humanity before their influence completely destabilizes galactic order." The debate that followed was the most contentious in Council history. Traditional demanded total war despite the risks, while pragmatic voices argued for finding ways to coexist with humanity's alternative civilization model. As the Council deliberated, events throughout the galaxy were rapidly outpacing their ability to respond. Dr. Sarah stood in the command center of New Prometheus, humanity's latest and most advanced mobile research platform. The massive station had been constructed entirely in deep space, using resources harvested from uninhabited systems and manufacturing techniques that would have seemed like magic to earlier generations. "Status report from the diplomatic missions," she requested. Intelligence Director Park activated displays showing the results of humanity's expanding contact with other galactic species. "Extraordinary progress," he reported. "We now have formal relationships with 37 different species, including several that hold significant positions within the Council hierarchy." The numbers told an incredible story. In less than a year, humanity had gone from total isolation to becoming the center of a growing network of interstellar relationships. What about technological exchange? Beyond all expectations, the Commonwealth has provided complete technical specifications for their quantum manufacturing systems. The hegemony research stations in the Tau region are sharing their anti-gravity research. Most significantly, the Merchant Alliance port at station has requested human assistance in developing new trade coordination protocols. Doctor studied the incoming data streams with amazement. Each new relationship brought access to technologies and knowledge that accelerated human development even further. Are we maintaining security protocols? Absolutely. All exchanges are carefully screened, and we're sharing only non-sensitive innovations. But the enthusiasm for collaboration is remarkable. These species seem genuinely excited about working together rather than competing. The transformation was unprecedented in galactic history. Species that had maintained rigid competitive relationships were discovering the advantages of genuine cooperation. Any word from Admiral's mission? Excellent news. The Stellar Confederation has agreed to provide sanctuary for human civilian populations in their territory. We now have safe zones established in over 20 different sectors. The strategic implications were enormous. Humanity's distributed defense strategy was working beyond their most optimistic projections. Instead of being contained within their original territory, they had effectively established a presence throughout much of the galaxy. "Doctor," announced Communications Officer, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's marked as a diplomatic breakthrough." The message that arrived would change the course of galactic history. Secretary General Martinez appeared on the communications screen, her expression conveying barely contained excitement. "Sarah, I'm pleased to inform you that we've received a formal communication from the Galactic Council requesting diplomatic negotiations to resolve the current crisis." Doctor felt a surge of disbelief. They want to negotiate after 8 months of total war. Apparently, their client species rebellions have reached critical levels. According to our intelligence sources, the Council is losing control of their own territory faster than they're losing military units to our forces. The irony was profound. Humanity's greatest victory hadn't come through superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but through the simple power of demonstrating that alternative approaches to civilization were possible. What are their proposed terms? Unknown yet, but they've requested a full diplomatic conference with representatives from all major galactic powers. They want this resolved through negotiation rather than continued warfare. Doctor exchanged glances with her senior staff. The offer represented either a genuine breakthrough or the most elaborate trap in galactic history. "Are we accepting?" The Global Assembly voted unanimously to participate, with appropriate security precautions. You've been selected to lead the human delegation. 3 weeks later, the most important diplomatic gathering in galactic history convened at Nexus Station, a neutral facility positioned at the intersection of several major. The conference brought together not just the traditional council powers, but representatives from dozens of species that had never previously participated in high-level galactic governance. Doctor stood in the primary conference chamber, a space designed to accommodate the radically different physiologies and environmental requirements of over 60 different species. The air hummed with translation, devices working overtime to enable communication between beings who had evolved on completely different worlds. Admiral approached the human delegation, her crystalline features reflecting the chamber's complex lighting systems. "Doctor," she said, her tone carefully neutral, "I must admit, when we first dismissed your species' membership applications, I never imagined we would meet under these circumstances." "Admiral," Doctor replied diplomatically, "I think none of us anticipated how much the galaxy would change in such a short time. Indeed, your species has exceeded all expectations." The opening session of the conference was unlike any previous diplomatic gathering in galactic history. Instead of the formal hierarchies and protocol restrictions that usually govern such meetings, the assembled representatives found themselves engaged in genuine collaborative discussions about the future of galactic civilization. High Arbiter addressed the assembly from his traditional position of authority, but his words carried a tone of uncertainty that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. "We convene this conference to address the fundamental challenges facing galactic civilization. The events of recent months have demonstrated that our traditional approaches to governance may require reconsideration." The admission sent ripples of surprise throughout the chamber. For a council leader to acknowledge flaws in the established order was unprecedented. "The human example," he continued, "has shown that alternative approaches to technological development and social organization may offer significant advantages. We must determine how to integrate these insights while maintaining stability and order." Ambassador K took the floor next, his tentacles betraying his agitation despite his diplomatic language. "However," he declared, "we cannot simply abandon millions of years of proven civilization in favor of untested experiments. The hierarchical structures that govern galactic society exist for good reasons and have maintained peace and stability across vast distances and timescales." Doctor requested permission to respond. "Honored representatives, humanity doesn't propose abandoning all existing structures, but rather demonstrating that diversity in civilization approaches can benefit everyone. Our goal isn't to replace your systems, but to show that cooperation and collaboration can coexist with whatever organizational models work best for each species." "But how can such diversity be maintained without chaos?" asked Counselor. "The galaxy requires coordination, resource allocation, and unified responses to common challenges. Without hierarchical authority, how can decisions be made and implemented?" The question struck at the heart of the galactic crisis. How could hundreds of different species coordinate their activities without centralized control? "Perhaps," suggested Coordinator K of the Commonwealth, "the answer lies not in abandoning coordination, but in finding new ways to achieve it." He activated displays showing the communication networks that had emerged during the human conflict. "In just months, we've seen the development of voluntary coordination protocols that allow species to cooperate freely while maintaining their autonomy. These networks have proven more flexible and responsive than traditional hierarchical structures." The presentation that followed documented the emergence of what historians would later call the collaborative protocols, voluntary agreements between species that allowed them to share resources, coordinate research, and respond to common challenges without subordinating themselves to higher authorities. "The results speak for themselves," Kay continued. "Technological development rates have increased by factors of 10 or more among participating species. Resource conflicts have virtually disappeared. Most remarkably, we've seen the emergence of genuine innovation rather than mere refinement of existing knowledge." Admiral listened to the presentation with growing unease. Everything being described challenged the fundamental assumptions of Dominion military doctrine. "These voluntary protocols may work for civilian cooperation," she interjected, "but what about security challenges? How can galactic civilization defend itself against external threats without unified military command?" Doctor smiled slightly. "Admiral, I think recent events have demonstrated that distributed, collaborative defense may be more effective than centralized military hierarchy. Human forces have successfully resisted the largest military deployment in galactic history through cooperation rather than command." "That was a special case. Was it, or does it suggest that military effectiveness comes from adaptability and innovation, rather than sheer force and rigid doctrine?" The question hung in the air as representatives from across the galaxy considered its implications. The human conflict had indeed demonstrated capabilities that traditional military thinking couldn't explain. Fleet Commander N, who had been silent throughout the discussions, finally spoke up. The humans are correct about one thing: their forces have consistently outperformed our projections. Every engagement has taught us that our standard approaches may not be optimal. His admission caused a stir throughout the chamber. For a senior Dominion officer to publicly acknowledge the superiority of human tactics was shocking. Perhaps, he continued, we need to reconsider not just our military doctrines, but our entire approach to governance and development. The days that followed saw the most intensive diplomatic negotiations in galactic history. Representatives worked in constantly shifting groups, exploring possibilities that would have been inconceivable under traditional council structures. Slowly, painfully, a new framework for galactic civilization began to emerge. The breakthrough came when a joint working group composed of humans and several former council client species proposed what they called the Galactic Cooperative Framework. Doctor presented the proposal to the full assembly after 5 days of intensive development sessions. The framework recognizes that different species may require different governmental approaches while still maintaining beneficial relationships with their galactic neighbors, she explained. Each species maintains complete autonomy over its internal affairs, but participates voluntarily in collaborative networks focused on specific areas of mutual interest: scientific research, resource sharing, common defense, cultural exchange, and so forth. The holographic displays showed how such a system might work in practice. Instead of rigid hierarchies, the galaxy would be organized around flexible networks that species could join or leave as their interests dictated. Coordination occurs through voluntary agreement rather than hierarchical command. Resources are shared based on availability and need rather than tributary relationships. Most importantly, innovation and development are driven by collaborative effort rather than competitive pressure. High Arbiter studied the proposal carefully before responding. Such a system seems chaotic. How would disputes be resolved? How would resource allocation be managed during crises? How would common threats be addressed? The same way humanity has addressed these challenges during our expansion, Doctor replied. Through communication, negotiation, and voluntary cooperation. Our experience suggests that beings generally prefer to cooperate rather than conflict when given genuine alternatives. Ambassador K raised obvious objections. Your species consists of a single biological type with relatively similar psychological patterns. The galaxy contains thousands of species with radically different evolutionary backgrounds and behavioral patterns. How can voluntary cooperation work across such diversity? Because, Coordinator K interjected, diversity of thought and approach is actually an advantage in collaborative systems. Different perspectives lead to better solutions than any single viewpoint can achieve. The debate continued for days, but gradually, support for the cooperative framework began to build. Species after species reported that their experimental collaborative relationships had produced better results than traditional hierarchical arrangements. Most importantly, the military situation was rapidly resolving itself. As species throughout the galaxy adopted collaborative approaches, the territorial conflicts and resource disputes that had driven military tensions began to disappear. Admiral found herself in the unprecedented position of commanding vast military forces with no clear enemy to fight against. Human resistance had evolved into human integration, and client species rebellions had transformed into cooperative development networks. Admiral, her aide reported during a routine briefing, we're receiving requests from 17 different sectors asking for Dominion protection of collaborative research facilities rather than suppression of independence movements. The transformation was complete. Instead of fighting to maintain hierarchical control, the Dominion was being asked to help protect the collaborative networks that were replacing the old order. What about human military forces? She asked. Mostly transitioned to civilian roles. Their ships are being used for exploration, research support, and emergency response rather than military operations. They appear to view the conflict as resolved. Admiral studied the strategic displays showing the new galactic configuration. Traditional territorial boundaries were dissolving as species established overlapping cooperative networks. Military tensions were decreasing as collaboration reduced resource conflicts. "It appears," she said quietly, "that we may no longer need massive military forces to maintain galactic order." The final breakthrough came when the Galactic Council itself voted to dissolve its hierarchical structure in favor of participation in the cooperative framework. The transition wasn't immediate or complete. Some species preferred to maintain traditional relationships, but the fundamental transformation of galactic civilization was irreversible. Doctor stood once again in the conference chamber, now reconfigured to eliminate the hierarchical seating arrangements that had previously separated species by their status in council rankings. Representatives sat in collaborative circles, working on joint projects rather than competing for resources or authority. 1 year ago, she reflected, humanity sent our 237th request for membership in the Galactic Council. Today, we're helping to build something entirely new, a galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than competition. Admiral approached the human delegation, her crystalline features reflecting something that might have been satisfaction. "Doctor, I owe your species an apology. When we first dismissed your membership applications, we believed we were protecting galactic civilization from primitive disruption. It took us too long to realize that you were actually offering to help us evolve. Admiral, every species in the galaxy has contributed something valuable to this transformation. Humanity simply demonstrated that alternatives were possible. The real achievement belongs to everyone who chose to explore those alternatives." The exchange captured the essence of what had changed. Instead of viewing galactic civilization as a zero-sum competition for resources and authority, species were beginning to understand that cooperation could benefit everyone. Secretary General Martinez joined the discussion via quantum communication from Earth. "The Global Assembly has voted unanimously to establish permanent collaborative relationships with all species interested in joint development projects. We're particularly excited about the proposed joint exploration mission to the Andromeda Galaxy." The Andromeda mission represented the ultimate symbol of the new galactic order. Instead of individual species competing for the prestige of first contact with external galaxies, dozens of civilizations were pooling their resources and capabilities for a truly collaborative exploration effort. "When do we depart?" asked Coordinator K. "The fleet will be ready within 5 years," Doctor replied. 73 different species have contributed ships, technology, and personnel. It will be the largest cooperative undertaking in galactic history. High Arbiter, who had retained his position, but transformed his role from judge to coordinator, spoke up from his position in the collaborative circle. 5 years ago, such a mission would have been impossible. No species would have trusted others with their most advanced technologies or risked sharing the potential benefits of discovery. Today, we compete to contribute more to the common effort. The transformation was indeed remarkable. Species that had maintained competitive relationships were now freely sharing their most advanced innovations and working together on projects that benefited everyone. Ambassador K, whose tentacles now rippled with something approaching contentment rather than agitation, observed the discussions with evident satisfaction. "I must admit," he said, "that collaboration has proven more rewarding than competition. My species has learned more in the past year through cooperative research than we achieved in the previous century of independent development." The comment sparked general agreement throughout the chamber. Again and again, species reported that collaborative approaches had exceeded their expectations and produced results that individual effort couldn't match. Counselor provided perhaps the most telling example. "The Merchant Alliance has completely restructured our trade protocols based on collaborative principles," she announced. "Instead of competing for maximum profit margins, we now focus on optimizing resource distribution for the benefit of all participants. Paradoxically, every species in our network has achieved higher prosperity than was possible under competitive trading." The economic transformation had been as dramatic as the political changes. By focusing on overall system optimization rather than individual advantage, the galaxy's economic output had increased exponentially while resource conflicts had virtually disappeared. Doctor reflected on how far they had all come since that first dismissive message from the Galactic Council. "We've learned something important," she said to the assembled representatives. The universe is,